If you're putting a roof on right now in the height of hurricane season, if I was a contractor, I'd be putting a provision in there that says, hey, if something happens and I can't get what you need for some reason, I have the right to raise my prices to reflect what the market is, because you're not expected to carry a warehouse full of plywood. I mean, you might have a couple of 100 feet of it or a couple of 100 yards of it. I mean, I know. Right. But you're not expected to be Home Depot at the same token and carry that much wood in here. And if you've got to go into the retail market, I mean, even though I know Home Depot gives contractors a discount, I don't know how much it is, and it's irrelevant for today.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you better be prepared for that. At the same token, if I'm signing a roofing contract with you in the end of November with a requirement that you be completed by May and you raise your prices during that period for no other reason except you decided to raise your prices, you got a little bit of a problem there.
Right.
Because you can't cost justify, there's that cost benefit analysis that you need to do, and it doesn't work there.
It's interesting, just as a side note, you talked about Home Depot and contractor discounts. Believe it or not, unless we're ordering in bulk, the price that you see on a label is the price that we pay. Yeah, there's no contractor discounts or anything like that. And actually, I've gotten friendly with some of the guys at Home Depot back in the day when I was spending more time there myself. But they used to have employee discounts, and I guess somebody ruined it for everyone. They would get discounts on tools and materials and all this stuff. And I guess some people made a little side business. And,
they just arrested one of the managers at one of the stores. It was on the news not that long ago.
Okay.
A couple $100,000 worth of the profit margin was walking out the door.
Wow.
Because of the manager. So, look, whatever.
There was a gentleman I was pretty friendly with, and he was with loss prevention, and I would see him all the time, and I would just watch him watching other people, and it's they do a pretty good job, is all I'll say. So I mean, I guess not with their own managers, because that might be hard to track. And it was actually interesting, that this conversation where it ended up going is during COVID we had some problems. Both plywood shot up. It went from like 20, as low as like 18 to $25 a sheet. Shot up. What I remember is 70s and possibly even in the 100s per sheet. So literally, what used to cost me $100, we include an allowance.
A four-time increase in doesn't work because. You're more, you've got your margins. I mean, I don't know if the industry standard is still 10 and 10. I mean, I know I have one contractor's client who does windows only. His margins are 12 and a half and 12 and a half now. And people pay it. So, it's the industry continues to be in a state of flux. And let's go back to the examples we were just giving about prices. I mean, after the devastation on the west coast of Florida, I'm sure your prices shot up as well, because what they were doing is they were moving all those resources over to the west coast.
Oh yeah. What's funny is that we recently, so on the roofing side, it's like clockwork. Every quarter, we're getting emails, prices are going up across the board or just on certain products, certain manufacturers. On the window side, we typically only see that like once a year, if even. So we went a couple years without seeing an increase, and actually it was either like May 7th or May 11th, we had a 7% increase. So I guess instead of raising it like 2 to 3% year over year, they just like hit us with a big increase. But I mean, well, so two things. One, during COVID, window prices didn't change, but our lead times did. It went from 6 to 12 weeks to like, we had some manufacturers that were 36 weeks lead time. So we had owners calling us like, where the hell are my windows? You're stealing from me. I'm going to report you to the BBB. And I'm like, we're here, we're in business, we're operational. I'll show you the order, I'll show you everything. I'll get you a letter from our manufacturer saying that they're behind because of COVID. So it was an interesting time. But we definitely saw increases on the roofing side. And then there was a freeze that happened in Texas. They just had like the temperatures just drop out of nowhere, where it typically doesn't get that cold, and a lot of the foam products are manufactured in Texas in that one city. I don't remember where it was. So foam, ISO insulation, tapered insulation, everything shot up, and then lead times basically went through the roof. So fortunately, we didn't have any projects that we didn't have materials on, but literally, like, if I was doing a roof and I was waiting to order the material and we started the roof without having the material delivered or accounted for, we would have been in some serious trouble because lead times went to like 6 months or something like that.
From a contractor's standpoint, I would think that, once the contract is signed, one of the first things you're doing with your downstroke, with your 20% or whatever you're asking for is at the beginning, is picking up material. It's not necessarily paying your workers. More importantly, you got to get your permits, you got to pull your permits, and you got to get your material. That's the key. And from a contractor's standpoint, a roofing contractor especially, I would think that more of your margin of profit is towards the back end, not towards the front end of the project.
Oh yeah, I always say I don't make my money until like the 26th of the month. There's a lot. People see the checks coming into the company, but they don't see all the money flowing out. So it's
that's just it. And even though I know that there's now better software, which didn't exist with Android, where you can sort of help you make some estimates, and which is adjusted daily. I mean, I forgot the name of one software, but I've seen it from adjusters that, I asked her during a deposition once, how often does this thing change? He goes, weekly.
Oh yeah. No, it
Every Sunday they drop me an update. I unload, and that's what I use for that week.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. So we utilize a crazy amount of technology at Bigfoot. And I think about that sometimes, in regards to, like, if I was working pre-Andrew, you have dial-up internet, very limited speeds, very little technology, everything's by hand. You leave the office, but you forgot some materials, or one of your guys forgot materials. You're trying to page him on his phone. He has to pull over to a payphone, inputting like 911 or, special codes so they understand. We have site photos. We have a bunch of automations that, kind of help track progress, help track payments, help track orders, and even, there's a thing in the industry now that, like, our suppliers, we have our prices so we can give an accurate price to the homeowner so we don't undersell a job or oversell. Now we have an automation that basically checks what our supplier was supposed to charge us versus what our supplier actually charged us. Then I can go back to them and say, you guys owe me some money. Although it's funny because they never undercharge us. It just so happens it always happens to be in their favor. Anyways, no, the technology is amazing. I couldn't imagine what life was like previous. So getting back to the topic, after seeing some of these disputes from the attorney side and from a neutral decision role, what has surprised you the most?
Usually it's a lack of communication. It's sometimes, I could put it on both sides on that one, on the contractor side, and I can put it on the owner side. If you're writing, if the contract that you're looking at as an owner isn't written in 5th grade language, that contract probably should go into an attorney for review before you sign that contract. It's like party of the first part and party of the second part.
Right.
We were told when I went to law school way back when, a lot of years ago.
Pre-Hurricane Andrew.
Pre-hurricane everybody. No.
The first hurricane.
Yeah. We were told don't overwrite contracts that people can't understand. I have taken, for example, I have 3 companies where I've taken their contract and I've rewritten the whole thing because the way they had it was just too complicated. Party of the first part, party of the second part, owner instead of owner, contractor, and that sort of thing. And not only that, they're in all construction contracts, there needs to be certain language in there pursuant to 713, Chapter 713 of the Florida statutes. Not all contracts have that, and they do need to be in there because that's the contractor's protection to have that in it, as well as the owners. So, I've rewritten a couple of those contracts. It's not a cheap thing. That's a couple of $1,000s worth of my time. But I've done it, and then I sit with the contractor, and he'll ask me questions. Why did you take that out? Why is this still in there? That sort of thing. If you've got an owner who's desperate, sometimes it may, not always, may make more sense if it's an emergency repair is to do one contract for the repair and a second contract for the reconstruction or whatever it is. Because if you're just doing the emergency repair and you complete the emergency repair, you're entitled to get paid, and that contract's done. At the same token, if after the repair is done, you as a contract goes back and say, well, look, like we discussed, this is a Band-Aid. This isn't the cure. Do you want to contract the cure? Usually, if they're happy with your work on the emergency basis, they're going to be happy with your work on the regular basis. Sometimes they won't.